What's up, gentlemen? This is Rising Phoenix Podcast, the podcast about how to rise up after your divorce. I'm your host, Michael Rhodes. Let's get into it. Welcome to the show. This is episode 52. This is the first in the podcast series episodes show. I'm recording this one, and I sort of have a live audience. And joining me today is Mr. Justin Dullihanty. We have a series of things we're going to talk about, and we're just going to jump right into it. So, first of all, Justin, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Mate, we love these type of things, man. Creating awareness for men, educating, and mate, it's what I love doing most.
Yeah, man. I'm excited about this. So let's talk. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about 6 different topics. I'm sure other things will come up as we get done with one topic. We'll then take some questions from the guys. So first topic is one that comes up a lot in this particular group. By the way, we're in the Divorce Support for Men group in Facebook. And loneliness is a big topic this time of year, especially. It's pretty prevalent in people because of the holidays and stuff. So let's talk about loneliness. Let's talk about, I don't think we need to define it, but what do we do about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's important for us to recognize the core issue with loneliness, or where it stems from, or also maybe another way to look at it is the origin of it, what causes it. Loneliness is a lack of connection. It's the absence of connection. And so if we look at that, we kind of become reliant. If we've constructed our life in a way, just say, for example, we don't like the person that we are. We're in constant states where we might be unconsciously disconnecting from ourselves because we don't like the person that we are. Like, you think about it, for example, if you go into a room with somebody and you're sitting around and you don't like the person they are, you're forced to kind of be there. It's like, shit, man, how do I get away from this person? So it's like, well, how do we know whether we like ourselves or not? Disconnection happens in many different ways. Another name for that is disassociation. A lot of men in particular will emotionally disassociate because we don't like feelings and emotions. We don't like, that internal dialogue that there might be that tape that plays in the back of our head 24/7 that tells us that we're not enough, we're not lovable. And consequently, we construct our relationships in a way that orchestrates the outcome that validates those beliefs. So if we don't like and respect ourselves, then we will find these little ways to, at an unconscious level, disconnect from ourselves. And if we're not truly connected with ourselves, we don't like and respect ourselves, we won't enjoy our own company. No. So loneliness happens as a consequence with the absence of connection. So if we're not connecting with ourselves, then we're going to feel lonely. And, if we're looking at this time of year, what exacerbates that is a lot of the things that happen visually for us is, you might find yourself walking down in a shopping center and you see happy families walking around. And if you've, recently gone through a divorce and you're finding that that's not you, that kind of takes you back to moments when you did have that at certain points. And that kind of really increases the emotional intensity of the situation that you're in at the moment. So then it's kind of like when there's an emotion that's triggered, it triggers all these thoughts and these beliefs, and that triggers more emotion, and then, creates that ongoing cycle, the perpetual cycle where we can't get out of it. And, and that kind of exaggerates different thoughts as well. Like, I'm never going to get up in another relationship. You might start reflecting on how you should have done better in that relationship. You wouldn't be in this situation that you are now. And you go into shame, internal shame, self-talk, calling yourself a fuck up, not good enough, not worthy, not deserving, not lovable. All these types of terrible things. And in the Alpha Code, we call this the first developmental stage that we work through, which is self-flagellation. And it's literally self-harm, that internal self-talk.
Yeah. And so what is the answer then?
Oh, the answer is it's self-connection. So we've got to go through a process of learning to like and respect ourselves. And, as you know, by going through the Alpha Code, man, it's a multifaceted approach in order to achieve that outcome. It's about building genuine self-worth. So from self-flagellation, it's self-acceptance. So what do we have a look at? There's underlying all this is called shame, and it's an inability for us to like and respect ourselves, to enjoy our own company. We can't actually hang out with us. So then we try to fill the void at any expense. This is all childhood developmental issues. And a lot of us, we get to our 30s, 40s, and 50s and recognize things haven't been working out the way that we want. And good times and good feelings, good emotions, they just don't seem to hang around very long. But that's because we have a deeply ingrained belief of unworthiness, and we have terrible self-worth issues. So it's about building genuine self-worth, and you will never feel lonely ever again if you actually like your own company. So building self-worth requires us to overcome that shame and that terrible relationship that we have with ourselves. ultimately we have to look at it and we say, well, the relationships that we have with someone else is simply just a reflection of the relationship that we have with ourselves. A lot of guys end up out of toxic relationships. We'll label it toxic, and we have a look at that word toxic. It's kind of, it erodes the soul, man. It makes us lose ourselves in the attempt to hold on to someone else. But what happens if we leave one of these toxic relationships, then we'll create that toxic relationship with ourselves independent of being in that relationship. So it matters not whether we're in it, we'll reproduce the same narrative in our life as a single person. But the problem with that is that we can't defend ourselves against ourselves. We can defend ourselves against somebody else.
Sure.
But you can't defend yourself against yourself. So there's so many different ways in which we build self-worth. And it's certainly outside the topic of today's conversation, because we'd need a few hours to, help a man completely fucking reassemble himself from the ground up. But it is exactly that. It's rebuilding the foundations. It's overriding the original, that original childhood template that we grew up accepting as normal. And it really is about, reprogramming, man. It's a reprogramming process. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a quick fix, right?
It's not a quick fix. And what we can find is, and you see it, man, through hundreds of guys that have been through the Alpha Code, is that you get dramatic results in a very short period of time. Okay. But so there's a difference between change and transformation. Transformation is a change of identity. Change is something which occurs, and it can occur in an instant, very rapidly. Okay. But because everything that's driven by neural pathways in the brain and our nervous system, our emotional state, and identity is just upheld and supported by so many different things. Maybe most people don't recognize that the architecture of an identity. It's critical for us to understand at some point that everything is driven by that identity. So change can occur very quickly, and that's why we're able to get guys out of states of depression and anxiety, beginning to feel really good about themselves, because of the implementation, the practical application of everything that we teach allows us to experience that change in a very rapid, short period of time. True transformation requires us to utilize those tools and implement everything that we've learned from a theory component, and for a period of time, in order for us to really embody everything that we've learned. But the challenge with that is that if we don't have accountability over an extended period of time, then it's very easy for us to go back to our default settings, right? Yeah. Because we look at our life as it is, and natural human behavior is to remain exactly as we are. First core human need is certainty. So the body and the mind and the soul will seek certainty before uncertainty or variety. Okay. So when guys experience uncertainty after a back end of a breakup, there's an identity issue. Who the fuck am I now? Yeah. So guys feel very lost and confused and empty and depressed. And what we find, a lot of guys experience depression off the back end of a relationship, because two things. Depression happens. Depression is actually a more severe version of sadness and grief. And so when we look at what grief is, it's the absence of love, right? So we feel depressed as a consequence of that. But then also, if a man has neglected multiple different areas of his life and only focused on serving and, making sure that he can uphold that relationship because he has such great fears of the departure or that ending, because he won't know who he is afterwards, then he begins to lose himself in the relationship, and then we've got an identity fucking issue over here. Right.
Yeah.
So,
sure.
Yeah.
So I got a couple questions. So I'm going to try to just use first name. So I'll say Jean. He says a question. So we feel lonely because we do not like ourselves.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Loneliness is the absence of connection. And so if we can't connect with ourselves, it's because we don't like ourselves and we haven't got the skills and strategies to be able to connect with ourselves. So why would we want to connect with someone that we dislike? And if we dislike ourselves, we'll find ways to disconnect from ourselves. And the way that we do that, drugs, alcohol, porn, sex, masturbation, gambling, fucking video games. By the way, if we're still playing video games in our 30s and 40s, we really are maintaining the archetype of a teenager. Shit. So that's the reason why, man. That's the reason why we feel lonely. And I can talk firsthand from my own experience. Or if we are used to somebody else's company, then we're used to gaining that connection. And so when there's a very quick interrupt and that's no longer there, then it's quite an enormous jolt for us, So then it takes us a period of time of learning to reconnect with ourselves, to feel that sense of wholeness and completion. And I think it's really important for men to do that before entering and going on the next romantic endeavor. Okay. Because it's really important that we fucking regroup, man. We reassemble ourselves. We get to know who we are outside of a relationship, pick ourselves up, and again, go back and, tidy up the wounds to the ego, self-worth issues. If we end up going back into a relationship right now, it's with the attempt to fill the gaping in a hole, the hole in our soul, the void. And that's not responsible. Okay. Because it means that we kind of haven't got over the last one. We have unfinished business. And it's important for us to regroup, rebuild, feel good, and not choose to get into a relationship because we need someone to fill the void, but invite someone into an already enjoyable life that you've created for yourself. And it's so much more of a powerful place to be.
Yeah, there's a bunch of questions, but I want to sort of detour, and you can speak about this because you've gone through it recently yourself, right? Yeah, you had a breakup. It was not pleasant, as most of them aren't. So you could speak to experience. And where are you? I'm curious. This is definitely a bit of a detour, but where are you at now in terms of like looking for a new relationship or not?
Yeah. No, I'm not, man. We're still relatively fresh. It's about 5 months that we've been apart now. And, only recently we've just decided to stop communicating because it was kind of dragging it out a little bit through the breakup experiment. And that I chose to do for a couple of reasons. One is because, it's my truth. I ask myself the question, if I'm going to go through this, then I want to use it as an opportunity to add value, but then also grow as an individual. So I'm always looking for ways in which I can grow, and using any circumstance or situation that I can use anything as a growth opportunity for myself. And I like to encourage guys to do the same thing. So for me to be vulnerable at the highest level was such an enormous growth opportunity for me, and to cry on camera and show the world how much pain I was going through. But not only that, to show that this is the process and that it's normal to experience sadness and grief, even if it's off the back end of a toxic relationship, which mine wasn't toxic, it was just, a misalignment of values. So, I certainly felt lonely after that. Okay. Because there was the absence of love there for me. And there's kind of like, we've become emotionally dependent, not codependent, but depending on someone, like you have a dependency for them to do certain things, for them to be there. And, when that's not there, it's like the loss of of an animal or something, man, it's normal. It's normal to feel low. It's normal to feel depressed. It's normal to feel sad. But what I chose to do, and I made a decision around that because, integrity is really important to me. Everything that we preach inside the Alpha Code, well, I've got to be the living, breathing product of it. So it's been a long time since I've felt grief at that level. But, there were times where I lent into some pretty dark emotional states that I thought, fuck, mate, I might not come out of this. And that's what intoxication does to you, man, where there's a high level of a dump in chemicals in the body that affects our psychology, that affects how we think and behave, and what our beliefs are. And sometimes, man, I was really, really fucking depressed. I felt really, really low and really, really sad. And during those moments, I thought life's shit. I thought, fuck, this sucks, man. So and we call it leaning in, or the invitation of those emotions and those feelings, so that we can express them from the body, so that we can heal at a rapid pace. And I can tell you right now, I've had relationship breakups which have dragged out years, man. And it's because I didn't process it properly. But I can tell you right now, mate, this has been a rapid processing. And it's not that I don't get sad from time to time now, but geez, man, it's fucking rapid, the growth from it.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned depression a few times there, and that's the next topic. So guys, I know you got some questions. I'll get back to them. Let's talk depression. What is it? Let's define it. And then how do we tackle it?
The psychotherapeutic industry has their different opinion on this. But I've worked with 9 different psychologists who had an inability to be able to help me overcome depression. What I found is, what was good about it is that I would talk about my problems in that chair, which would give me more awareness. And with awareness, we have choice. We can't change something that we're not aware of, because we're just deleting that information altogether. It's not just not a part of our reality. But also found it to be a form of codependency as well. Mm-hmm. I would turn up, I would pay money. They would become reliant on me for their financial survival. I'd become reliant on them for my emotional survival. So it was kind of like this, and this pattern formed where I'd turn up, and it's like taking an emotional shit on their rug and leaving 24 to 40 hours later, after feeling that catharsis and feeling lighter, I'd be back up in my head, feeling depressed and not anxious. And I was like, fuck, where does this thing stop? So what I recognized through the process is what causes depression? And I can't say from there's been no clinical trials or anything like that. But what I can say without a shadow of a doubt is that when we live aligned to our authentic self and as a consequence of living aligned to those true core values of ours, it's very difficult for depression to exist. It really is, because what I've noticed is that depression happens when men don't know who they are and they don't have a purpose in life. Okay. So there's that part. And there's also what I've also recognized is that there's grief. So we have all these different identities, and a lot of guys just don't know that they have these identities because they've never done a values elicitation. They've never questioned who they are. And they might say, I'm a dad, or I'm a partner, I'm a husband, or they might give themselves a title at work or whatnot. But the greatest threat to a man's mental and emotional health is if he actually doesn't have an idea who he is. He doesn't know what his true north is. He doesn't know where he's going in life. Okay. So that's why it's really important for men to have a purpose. And it's not like your job needs to be a purpose, but it needs to be a reason for you to fucking exist. A lot of guys are quite limp and they're passive and they're weak in terms of their character. So ultimately what we're talking about here is a collapsation of identities. So let me give you a bit of a narrative here, just to put this into perspective, because I know there might be a bit of ambiguity with the conversation here. So I'll talk quite literally. A man and woman, whatever, if we look at, let's take romantic relationships because it's the sort of topic of the conversation. We unconsciously create a version of ourselves and present a version of ourselves that we deem to be appealing to the opposite sex or the same sex. It matters not. So we present a version of ourselves, which might be confident, self-assured. We've got all our shit together. We lead with our strengths, okay? Knowing that we've got, some deep deficits and flaws and imperfections, which we all do. And that's what we need to learn to accept. So we get into this relationship. We experience a high level of euphoria, emotional intensity, a lot of sex, a lot of passion, intimacy. Now, if you're a man that struggles with poor self-worth and you don't like yourself, okay, this is like a glove-like fit, because what this does, it's filling the hole in the soul, man. It's filling the void, and it feels like we've finally arrived. And I've gone into relationships feeling that at emotional intensity. It's called infatuation. Most guys will say, I finally found the one. I'm in love, but it's not love yet. It's infatuation. It's a dump in chemicals, man, that floods the receptor sites in the brain that causes us to get lost in the moment and choose to sidestep seeing those fucking very real red flags at the start of that relationship. So after about 3 to 6 months, then compatibility comes into play, because all our values come to the surface, all the dysfunction, all the things that we hid about ourselves, what she hid about herself, come to the surface. And it's like, far out, man. I'm not drunk anymore. I'm not high anymore. This is the truth. So it's kind of like an inverse relationship between those endorphins and compatibility in a sense, so it's like as the endorphins and that high rush from the start of that relationship honeymoon period begins to reduce, then compatibility stuff comes to the surface, right? Yep. So that's where all our dysfunctions, and we can't lie about who we are for a certain amount of, after a certain amount of time. So what happens is, as this relationship begins to turn toxic, chaotic, dysfunctional, as we're in this relationship that's filling that void inside of us, we begin to unconsciously neglect all the other things that are really important to us. We might have had a great friendship group before, a great, with all the guys. We used to, you might go out and do sports and things like that, catch up, and, might have a beer from time to time, barbecues, camping, whatever it might be. Then you might look at different areas of your life that, made you the person that you were back there. You might have had hobbies, and you focused on your career and all those types of things. But if we have a weak character, if we don't know who we are, we don't have a strong sense of self, and we've gone into that relationship to fill the void and feel better about ourselves, then what happens is we redirect our attention only on that relationship, because that's fulfilling every single one of our needs. So we neglect all the other areas of our life and make that the primary purpose of our life. So the relationship actually becomes the purpose, not the other things in life, right? Yep. So that becomes our number one thing. In a sense, we've collapsed all the identities that uphold those other important areas of our life, and we're focusing on one because that fills us. Yep. So as that begins to deteriorate and erode, that triggers abandonment anxiety and fear and concern within us. And then we become more agreeable, more needy, more passive, weaker, and just accommodating. And then that's quite unappealing for the feminine, because they lose trust and respect for us. And around that time that happens, we've got sexual desire die off. And what's really important to note here, and write this down and put a fucking circle around it, fellas, people are not loyal to people. I don't care if you have a ring on your finger. People are loyal to their deepest needs, and they're loyal to their value system. even if we don't know what that is. So if there's a lack of fulfillment and contentment and there's that sexual desire die off in a relationship, a woman will be the first to go. And the moment that she starts to language that she's fallen out of love with you, she has done for a very long time. And it's almost like all bets are off at that stage. So anyway, fast forward, she departs, she ends up leaving the relationship. And the identity that we've upheld is the only one that's become enmeshed with hers. So when she leaves, so does our identity. So we're standing there with our dick in our hand thinking, far out, man, where do I go to from here? Who am I? I feel lost, empty, confused, dead and empty inside. And then a man will go on into his head and say, I should have been better. I should have done better. And there's that shame that kicks in and that exacerbates the entire thing. So that's why men will stay in pain. Okay. It's hard. It's easy to get a man to get over his relationship. Okay. But this is why a lot of men will start putting in effort at the back end. And it's because the departure of the relationship, it's not necessarily the partner that they want to get back, because if they really wanted that partner, they would have invested in that relationship during the course of it. They really want to get themselves back because they don't know who they are when they're not in that relationship. And that's where depression comes into it. Identity conflict. I don't know who I am, in combination with grief. So to overcome that, that's why we're able to rapidly rebuild men from the ground up and overcome states of depression. I never claim that because I'm not a clinical psychologist, thankfully so, because that would limit the skill set significantly. Yeah. However, man, like I've not seen anyone help men overcome depression as rapidly as we do.
No, agreed. I mean, I'm a byproduct. I can speak the truth about that because I did it myself. I want to jump back. There was a question about that. About rapid transformation. Is rapid transformation ignoring the value of regrouping? Lee asks. I would think you would. Yeah. I'm gonna lead you a bit here, maybe, but I would think that you don't need one to do the other. I suppose. I don't know. What's your answer to that one?
I think, and I'm not so sure that I said rapid transformation. Maybe I did. I think maybe rapid change. So transformation takes a period of time because we have to emotionalize the lessons. Yeah. Transformation is a change of identity. And in order to do that, we must maintain what the change is in order for us to normalize that. So you think about it, for example, you've lived your entire life feeling depressed and anxious and fucking dead and empty inside, and you've lived quite a miserable, pathetic existence. I mean, respectfully speaking, then your nervous system has adjusted to that. Okay. So if you're feeling dead and empty inside, what do we seek? Emotional intensity to drive us out of the hole. So if we've got this emotional state that's up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, it's kind of like giving a box of crayons to someone and say, just draw with 2 colors. That's all you've got to, but there's so much that we get to experience in between in the emotional spectrum, the whole emotional repertoire. There's so many different feelings and emotions and all those types of things. But when we're seeking emotional intensity, it's the stress response, right? It's like stress and adrenaline, and euphoria versus like that depressed low vibrational frequency. So what happens is as we come out of a state where we've spent our entire life going up, down emotionally, then the nervous system seeks that, and it seeks to reproduce the same emotional rhythm. And it does that very, very intelligently. So we'll pair up with a partner that'll cause that sort of intensity. So it's like emotional intensity, like peak highs and like real low lows, then you remove yourself from that situation and then you'll reproduce it. You might choose to take drugs that produce the exact same emotional rhythm. You might go up into your head and do the same thing. Genuine happiness is not about emotional intensity. It's not euphoria. It's not excitement. It's inner peace, inner contentment, joy, bliss. Okay. It sits around here. But men, in order to get there, they don't think that that's happiness. They think euphoria is happiness. And that's just part of change. So transformation is allowing us to maintain everything that we've learned. We're changing, we're normalizing peace and contentment without the chaos. And we need to normalize that in the body and the mind for an extended period of time. Therefore, that becomes our new norm. At the start, when I was talking about certainty, the body seeks certainty over variety first, or unfamiliarity. So this is going to be unfamiliar. And this is the core reason why a lot of people don't recognize what self-sabotage is. Yeah. Self-sabotage is an unconscious construct. It's an unconscious, compulsion. We behave in certain ways that give us the shitty outcomes that we don't want. But that's driven because our nervous system and our beliefs are driving that narrative, and it constantly puts us back in that hole routinely that we have to climb out of. So transformation takes a period of time, okay? Because we have to maintain the identities that are responsible for that change. we aren't the change. We aren't the transformed version first. Okay. We have to maintain everything in order to get us that. So that's a new developmental stage. And what I see the fastest possible way, 12 to 18 months, man, we have to maintain it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was going to ask
change happens quick, man. Change happens really quickly.
I was going to ask, like, what kind of time frame is ideal for sort of locking in a change? How you said 12 to 18 months.
12 to 18 months is very fast. 12 to 18 months, and that's why what we do is we open. It's not like the way that we've constructed, I believe, is the best way to construct it. It's not a 12-week course and you get, off you go. You've paid your fees. You're not around anymore. We keep it open until results are achieved. Yep. And the reason for that is because of all the challenges that I went through. And I'm like, we need to build something that gets transformation. I'm only motivated by results, man. Yep. To get men across the line with their wellness. And, we, as you know, man, we operate from a moral and ethical standpoint. And a lot of people aren't prepared to do that because they're driven by the dollar. I'm driven by integrity.
Amen. Well, I can, again, speak to this. I plan on redoing the code in January. Because I've had trials and tribulations over the last year, and I need a re-up. I need to relearn some of these things and reinforce some of them. And I thank you for allowing that to occur, because most people wouldn't. I think most people would not do that. They would say, "Okay, here, send me another, another check, and then you can do it again." And you don't do that, and it's fucking awesome, and I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
So let's, I think there might be some more questions, but I don't feel like scrolling through. There's a lot of comments. Everyone is very in line with what you're saying. So let's move on to, guys, and I will review it. Just give me a few minutes. Let's talk about anxiety. What is it? How do you handle it? All those kinds of things.
Yeah, man, I'm putting together a couple of free courses. There's contributions and enormous value of mine. So we're having a look at, I've done a recent survey in the ACE Men's Development Group, the Facebook group, and I've just put it out there yesterday. What is it that you guys need? And some of the feedback that's come back is in and around a course that would help guys mitigate symptoms of anxiety. So what is anxiety? Anxiety sits in the fight or flight response. It's a protective survival mechanism that's built inside of all of us that keeps us alive, essentially. The other part of that is so that the primary emotions that sit inside a fight or flight response is anger and anxiety. So it's the fight, or freeze. So if you have a look at biology, and again, I want to go back to the origin of things because it helps us pave the way psychologically and say, I understand why that might be the case. And I also want to have a look at how we can actually develop our personality features and character by utilizing anger, for example, and how that affects us in so many different ways. So anger is a repelling emotion. Okay, so it's the nature and the features of anger causes us to push things and people away or scare it away, right? Or use that anger, that very powerful, enlivening, activating human emotion, to fight. Most men are divorced from that part of themselves. They might have grown up seeing an abusive father, and they thought, well, anger's bad, therefore masculinity is bad. It makes me wrong to be a man. It makes me wrong to feel anger. So what they do is they stuff it down, and they don't gain access to that very real masculine aspect of themselves. And we'll talk about that, like how it impacts our ability to set healthy boundary conditions, our assertive nature as men, not dominance, not abuse, assertive nature, how it impacts our personality features, So that's part of it. So, you think back in caveman days, if there's a tribe or another tribe member that we run into, and naturally what happens is social hierarchy kicks in. We look at them, we size them up, and that's why we size ourselves up against other guys. Are like, can I take him in business? Can I take him fighting? Can I take him? Am I better looking than him? Am I better handsome? It's our modern day version of doing so. So in this case, it's, can I fight him? Can I win? And if it is the case, then that will trigger that fight or flight response. And then that will usually result in some type of anxiety, because that prepares us, to fight, but then also anger as well, because that also helps us to generate power to win the battle. And tribes do this, right? But then we might see a saber-toothed tiger, and we're like, no way in the world, man, I'm going to fucking line this guy up. So then fear kicks in. So then we flight, we run, so we run away from it. And then the other one is freeze, which is no response. Okay. And, we might size it up and see the saber-toothed tiger and we go, fuck me, I'm going to freeze here in the tall grass, hoping that it doesn't see me. Most men these days a flight and freeze. It's a fear response. And most men, this kicks in when there's an uncomfortable conversation to be had, when there's a perception of conflict about to take place. When a partner shows feelings or emotions, and men will shut down, they'll freeze. And this is a form of abandonment for females. And this impacts the relationship because she sees a man as being weak. She can't trust him. She can't trust him emotionally. So when a female shuts down emotionally, then she shuts down sexually as well. So in this case, this is kind of like the origin of the fight or flight response. Now, how does that impact our life? We've got a condition called general anxiety disorder, GAD. And so for men who live under the condition of the general anxiety disorder, and where they say wherever there's depression, there will be anxiety. That's a fear-based response. And what I've seen to be true with the men that I've mentored and also within myself, why does anxiety exist? What is anxiety? And I've noticed that anxiety is what's called a surrogate emotion. It steps in to do the job of the emotion that we don't want to feel because we fear it. In a sense, we're running away from that part of ourself as opposed to feeling what's beneath the surface so we can actually heal it. There's a saying, if you can feel it, you can heal it. If you can't, it won't be. If you can't gain access to it, then it won't be true. So how do men deal with that? We medicate. Okay, we self-medicate, drugs, and all those coping mechanisms that we talk about. But what most men will do is they'll feel an emotion like boredom, emptiness, inner deadness inside, depression, sadness, and then almost instantaneously they'll go up into their head and then they'll attach meaning to the emotion. And they'll say, if I can just fix this problem outside of it, if I can mend the relationship, if I can do this, or this, then I can change my internal state, right? So then this gives birth to hyper controlling behaviors where we try to control outcomes. We try to prepare for the worst. So we go up in our head and we role play something that hasn't existed yet. And we say, because unconsciously what we're doing is if I can prepare for the worst by already reliving it, then by the time I get to that event, then I've got a solution for it. And I can control the outcome. If I change my partner, that will make me feel less jealous and insecure and less anxious. So then we try to control people and situations. And what we're really trying to do is control our emotional state. But we can't control anything that's external to us. We can only control things that are internal to us. So anxiety is a surrogate emotion, man. Yeah, it steps in to do the work of the emotion that we don't want to feel or that we're petrified to feel. And that's why when I did the breakup experiment, I said, I feel anxious. I went up to my head and then I had to bring myself back down into my body and feel the authentic emotion that sits in the body. And I know that that's just energy that I need to release through crying or anger or punching my fucking bed or whatever it might be. Yep. It's a somatic experiencing. It's a full body experience that allows it to get released from the body so that it's not stored. That comes out later on through either physical illness or mental and emotional conditions.
Yeah, I've been working with a somatic therapist recently, and man, that shit. I mean, we talk about it in week 3 in the Alpha Code, and I've just kind of deepened that and tried to really focus on it. And it is incredibly powerful. I can tell you where I'm at when by noticing my body. Like I will know I'm anxious without realizing I'm anxious based on where my stomach's at or whatever. I'll be like, oh shit, I'm stressed because now I feel it in my back or whatever. It's fucking weird and awesome all at the same time. Yeah, I want to back up to drill down. There's a couple comments here. There's a lot of comments. So please. Resentment. We're sort of talking about anger. Lee is asking resentment, not anger. Just flat out resentment. I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, Lee, but you mean what is that maybe, or what? How do we combat that? I'm not 100% sure, but I think he's looking at resentment. What is that? How do you
unresolved conflict. Unresolved conflict. Yeah, holding on to something without there being a resolution. So there's a lack of acceptance. Yeah. So essentially, it kind of goes back to that anger that has not been released yet. And if you release your anger, it'll release resentment. And the idea is that you don't If you're still feeling anger and resentment towards an ex-partner, it's because you still love them and you haven't gone through the healing process, which basically means you haven't reached that place of acceptance. What you want to feel around your ex-partner is a feeling of what's called indifference, neither here nor there. You see them walking down the street, it's like, well, there's no emotion that comes up. That's when you know you've truly healed. But when there's anger still there, there's unfinished business to take care of. I always say, and a very simple thing for those who are listening to this, let your emotion guide you to do what it wants you to do. And that's not to go around and punch holes through your ex-partner's fucking door and all sorts of stuff. That's, we've got to be mature about this stuff, but there's certainly ways that you can do it. Sadness, what's that want you to do? Cry, right? Yeah. Anger, what's that want you to do? Yell and scream. Do that. Wind up your window, man. Put music up loud so you don't look like a fucking psychopath and scream your head off. What else? Take a baseball bat to your bed and unload. If you're an angry person, you're really just a sad person. So if someone that's walking around with rage and anger and resentment, it's just sadness, man. It's covering sadness. But again, anger can be a surrogate emotion. It steps in to do the work for the emotion that we don't want to feel. So it kind of morphs into anger because we don't want to feel sadness, and we get angry at the other person for betraying us. It might be something like an ontological shock, man, which really throws people out, and it's a reevaluation, reassessment, and a questioning of everything once betrayal's taken place. You're in a relationship with someone you thought that you knew, and you find out that she's cheated. And then you question every aspect of that relationship. And because you thought that was true and that was real for you, you then begin to question all aspects of life. And then you end up in this enormous shock. And you're like, fuck, I just don't know what's true. I've lost trust for myself. I've lost trust for everyone else. And there's the ultimate confusion comes in. And again, it's unsettling, man. It really is. Yeah.
I want to, a gentleman in here, I want to read this statement to you, and I want you to dive into this one. He says, my boundaries were not good when angry. Fights led to mental and verbal abuse to the person I never wanted to hurt. What do you say to that, man? Because I think you have something to say to him.
Boundary conditions. So anger is a repelling emotion. And anytime that you're angry, you're attempting to push a partner away. Again, and anger can happen as a consequence of having attachment fears. So the closer that we get to someone, if we have attachment fears, anger will kick in to cause a problem, to push the other person away. So we have a look at a relationship, for example, and we give context around the question from multiple different ways, so you can truly understand what it might be doing. You're in a relationship with someone, you get really close to them at the start, a lot of passion and sex and intimacy. Okay, then compatibility comes in, that intensity drops, and then you've got that's where love truly develops. Okay, because love's not infatuation. Love takes time. You have to see trust, which is the congruency of words and actions over a period of time, or multiple times, depending on your convincer strategy, for your nervous system to relax. And once your nervous system relaxes, you become more open and vulnerable, and you let that person in emotionally. But if you have attachment fears and you've got that built-in distancing tactic, what that will do is the closer that you get to someone, or the closer that they get to you, notice how they'll start an argument to push you away when things are good. So what we've got is this proximity of love, and we can't get any closer because one person puts in effort, the other person it pushes away, and that triggers their abandonment anxiety. They run away. Then this triggers their abandonment anxiety. They push forward. So we've got this relationship where the proximity never gets closer. It never allows us to form a deep bond and connection because we can't get close enough. Okay, so that's one reason why anger might kick in. Anger might also happen from hurt. So if we look at what is happening in those moments, it might be, by the sounds of things, not truly being heard or understood. And this is all childhood stuff. So if you weren't heard or understood as a child, and you learned to get angry, kick and scream and throw your fucking toys around the house, and that got people's attention, then that's a learned response. That's a strategy that you'll maintain to get attention. Yep. So if you need to be loud, and you learned that maybe at the dinner table your parents fucking argued a lot, and that got everyone's attention, then that's an attention-seeking strategy that you're using. Underlying anger issues, underlying sadness issues is the core of those issues. So my suggestion in and around that would be to, first of all, you have to release that energy from the body, okay? Then you got to reprogram things. And you've actually got to, in moments of conflict, that can stimulate anger, because you're getting closer to feelings of vulnerability, and anger prevents the person from gaining access to that part of you. So that repels them away.
Yeah, I'm living proof of it.
Me too.
Yeah. Okay, let me cover a few more here. A lot of comments, a lot of fucking comments, which is awesome. Thank you guys, I appreciate it. Situational anger, usually okay. I get low blows and it leads me back to anger. Does the unfinished business that leads to anger connected to events surround the divorce process? What is that? Does the unfinished business that leads to anger connected to events surrounding it? Well, yeah, I would say if you have unresolved issues, of course that will lead to eventually a divorce, really, right?
Sooner or later, it's quite destructive. It's not channeled effectively. So just on anger, I want to come back to it. If we as men have a problem with the emotion anger, we will also have a difficult time setting boundaries, healthy boundary conditions. We'll have a difficult time stimulating feelings of motivation and drive. We'll have issues with achieving goals and pursuit and ambition in life because it's driven by that. We'll have issues with the development of our masculine energy. We'll have issues with assertiveness. So we'll be taken advantage of. It's kind of like that people-pleasing archetype. You know, the people-pleasing persona, the real nice guy that just is overly accommodating, wants to do everything for everyone else. Okay. But deep down, he resents everyone because they don't give back to him. And then he acts out his dissatisfaction with the worst form of communication, which is passive-aggressive being a communicator. And what that does, that's like slamming doors, shutting down, doing the silent treatment. And it's all an attention-seeking strategy. But what it really demonstrates is the weakness of character because he can't be forthright, to the point, and deliberate with his communication style. And therefore, it's the fastest way to fuck any relationship, being passive-aggressive. Men need to learn how to tolerate uncomfortable feelings and emotions in order to develop the character. It's super important that we learn to integrate anger because it's just built in and it's just part of us. And if guys are amputating that emotion from the emotional repertoire, they're going to live a very chaotic life and a very passive life and a very pathetic life. And I just say, I'm very careful with my word selection, but the word pathetic is quite demeaning almost, but it's an accurate representation and description of the type of character that a lot of men are that have built into their personality features and how they go about life. It's quite pathetic.
Yeah, I unfortunately agree, and I can agree, and it hits home because that was me. That was
me.
Well,
yeah, a lot of guys, man, absolutely. Yeah.
So let's do one more thing on anger. Pete is asking. Pete, I love you. And Matt, no worries about the question. I know you're typing on your phone, brother. Pete's asking, how do you resolve anger when the trigger of that anger is regularly or constantly reoccurring? So I would guess maybe you have to see your ex constantly. I know I have this issue. Yes. How do you deal with that when you're faced with
Yeah. So there's a question framework that I think you should really, so no one's responsible for your emotional states. Only you are emotional for the emotional state. Okay. So if you're constantly exposing yourself to the stimulus that's activating that emotional state, you have to ask yourself the question, what is it specifically about this that is a problem for me? And that will lead you closer to the truth of what you've got to overcome. Because what happens is a lot of us are really it's the first stage of learning. It's called unconscious competence. We don't know what the problem is. We're completely deleting the information. So what we do is through that question, we have to gain awareness around the problem in order to change the problem. If we don't have awareness, then we can't change the problem because it doesn't really exist. But the problem is happening at an unconscious level. So what we need to do is take it from the unconscious level. We have to take it from the unconscious level, bring it into our consciousness so that we can language it. And when we can language it, then it's a part of our reality. So if we ask ourselves the question, how is this a problem for me? What is it specifically that's causing this, that's creating this problem? And then if we get a pen and paper out and we begin to dissect it, man, we write it down. We say, we strategize it, we pull it all apart. That way we can actually see it. We take the information from here or from back here to on paper, and we have to think to write, which means we get a lot more clarity around it. Then we can have a look at the problem. Then we have something fucking tangible that we can deal with, right? But again, unresolved issues, man. If you're still harboring resentment, it's because you haven't reached that place of acceptance. And that goes through the healing cycle. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's move on to the fourth topic, feeling lost and lacking direction. And I think this is one that a lot of these guys face because they've lost their identity. They've lost their purpose. Now they don't know what the fuck to do. And I can relate. I can relate to that. Thankfully, I found the alpha code at a point in my journey, and it started to put me back together and allow me to find my purpose, which is what I'm doing right now.
Absolutely.
But what do you do as a man who has gone through a divorce and he's feeling helpless and hopeless?
Yeah. Great question. First of all, we're listening to the language of helpless and hopeless. Helplessness is the feeling that we can't be helped. Then that turns into hopelessness. I'm running out of hope, and that leads to despair. And then we've got a real big problem. Okay, because then we start questioning life. What's the purpose of life? That's my concern with men, is that they don't get the help that they need, which is, and I have to be honest about it, it's not readily available, man. There's not a lot of options with regards to this type of work and helping men reassemble themselves, patch themselves back up, get out of pain, and then get to a place where they're genuinely thriving in life and have purpose and true fucking meaning to life. So we're talking about men that have lost themselves and they've lost their way. They've lost their way because they've lost themselves. And that's complete self-neglect. Okay. And that stems from self-worth issues. Okay. And so what happens is when we've got self-worth problems is we will act and behave in ways to gain acceptance and approval from everyone else so that we can feel good about ourselves. And in the process of doing so, we disconnect from our authentic self and become who everyone else needs us to be. And we're abandoning our true identity. And that happens because we don't like the person that we are, and we seek to fit in and just please people because that gives us a sense of value. We might construct relationships in a way that has the other person depend on us. And if they need us, they'll never leave us. And that eases our abandonment anxiety, right? So we become hyper controlling in that sense. Guys who end up out of relationship that feel lost and confused, that is somewhat normal after the end of a relationship and a breakup, because there's just so much that needs rearranging, especially if kids are involved. We're starting a brand new life, and that's going to be met with a lot of uncertainty, which means there's going to be some anxiety there too. Now, to rebuild ourselves, the fastest way that we're able to do this, as you know, we do this through what's called a values elicitation and identity extraction session. So it's a framework of questioning that allows us to get to the authentic values, and then those values become the extension of those values become identities. And then those identities have behaviors. So ultimately, if we haven't been living aligned to our authentic self, we'll feel things like depressed. We'll feel things like anger. We'll feel, sadness, confusion, emptiness, feeling lost, lack of fulfillment in life. But the moment that we live aligned to our authentic values, all those things collapse because we're now living our authentic self. And what happens is the more that we be who everyone else needs us to be, the more that we out practice our authentic self. So we're kind of detached from ourselves, and that kind of circles back around to that feeling of loneliness because we don't like the person that we are. We don't know the person that we are. So we feel completely disconnected. So the way that we do this is we find the core values, we give the framework to make decisions, and then very quickly, that's why we're overcome feelings of depression and anxiety very quickly, is because we have those week 3 emotional growth and development tools, and we also have the framework to live our authentic self. And those two things there are fucking priceless, man, with helping men rebuild themselves from the ground up. That gives us clarity. That gives us certainty. Most guys who live their life to please other people actually don't know how to make decisions for themselves because they may be making decisions for everyone else, living somebody else's life. So when it comes time to living our own life, it can be quite powerful in terms of the feeling, like self-assurance, and that level of confidence that we get rapidly is something that is very quickly met with self-sabotage because we don't feel worthy and deserving. We haven't embodied it yet. We haven't embodied the identity yet. We haven't undergone the transformation. So we're experiencing change, but that's why we need to be held in an environment that keeps our feet to the fire, and we have coaching support and most of all accountability to ensure that people are following through for a period of time so they experience transformation. And it's about being held in an environment that supports transformation, not just change.
Yeah, and I want to really drill down on this, and I want to use myself, and I'm feeling very fucking emotional, honestly, thinking about it. My code. It's a list, but it changed me because it gave me a roadmap and connection, and leadership and love, and these things drove me and drive me now. And That's what he's talking about, guys. When he talks about the alpha code, when he talks about your living aligned to your values, that's what it is. It's finding these things that make you tick, that fill your cup. What are the things that you love to do, and how does that drill down into a value? And that's why I'm here doing what I'm doing, because Justin, through the alpha code, allowed me to find my code, my values. And that's what this shit is all about. That's what leads you to finding who you are, is your values, period. Right?
Oh, absolutely, man. And I got to commend you, man. You followed your bliss, man. You followed your truth. And that's a pure example of saying, you know, I'm going to move into something that gives me the highest level of fulfillment and contribution and change. My belief is this, is that, you know, everyone's got their belief, and please choose to take it on board or just completely, you know, reject it. But I look at, you got to look at things through a different lens. It's like, what's still on the planet? It's anything that remains on the planet contributes to something greater than itself, because it has resources, it has value, right? And so why would men choose to take their life? Because they're useless. Right? In their eyes, they're useless. There's no use for them anymore. There's no value. And the emotions lead them to that decision. So when we look at the contrast to that, rapidly, we ask ourselves the question when we're not feeling great, when it's out of alignment. So we have a framework very quickly snaps us back into gear. And it's like, fuck, man, I've just been living out of alignment. So when you live your authentic truth, man, you start to feel confident, self-assured, fucking powerful, enlivening, activating human emotions that allow you to just drive positivity in your life. And it happens very, very quickly. That's an example of change. When you get your code, you're like, fuck, man, things have changed rapidly, but we have to maintain it. And you have, and it's led you to your truth. We've had guys that turned up in broken relationships, and you know, they're now become coaches, you know, after our 12-month course. They've now become coaches. They're stepping in their truth, and they're giving from the greatest gift. So contribution, my idea is this, is that, you know, there's no coincidence why we find ourselves in the situation that we are. And I think we have to look at it at a higher level, almost spiritually, man, because that's what purpose really drives us towards, that spiritual connection and truth. We undergo a transformation. We experience pain, it's a metamorphosis. When we're killing off an old identity and giving birth to the new one, it's painful. Okay, but it's fulfillment once we step into the new one. We don't get to sidestep challenge or pain. It's just a natural consequence of being a living organism on planet Earth. It is what it is. Let's change our perception around what we're really going through here, which is growth. It's an enormous opportunity for growth, yes, which then means that we change the person that we are. We move through the problems that we have, and then we come out the other side, and then we get to show somebody else how to do that for themselves. And that gives us true purpose and value. That allows us to feel valuable because we're contributing at the highest level. It's kind of like, you know, a very simple example of it is learning to tie your own shoes. You kind of need a mentor to teach you how to tie your shoes for a period of time, right?
Yep.
There's no harm in that. First of all, you don't even know there's fucking shoelaces or shoes to tie when you're young, but someone teaches you and says, this is how you need to do it. We become dependent on them to learn how to tie our shoes. Then we become independent because we've tied our shoes for a period of time that we know how to do it. We no longer need the mentor. Then what happens is we go from dependent to independent to interdependent, which is now teaching other people to tie their shoes. And so it's the ripple effect, man. You know, and that's what I'm passionate about guys going out there and creating the ripple effect. And man, let's go out there and change the lives of men together. That's my run.
Amen. And clearly you're doing that. I want to,
as are you.
Well, thank you, sir. And we had this conversation. Yes, it was yesterday or 2 days ago, and that's something I'm working on in 2022. Yeah. Receiving is still weird to me, but thank you.
Man, I just want to say I was having a conversation with I was having a conversation with my mum last night, and we've developed a really good friendship now. It's well balanced. It's, you know, it used to be codependent, but, you know, and it used to be quite challenging, but now we've both healed our stuff, man. And we just have a friendship now, which is quite nice. And I was telling her about, you know, we're doing this, you know, interview and podcast today. And I said, it's with one of my graduates. I'm extremely fucking proud of him. And I told her about what you've assembled for yourself. And she just thought that was the most incredible thing that, you know, anyone's put together, because it's a one-stop shop, man, for what everyone needs, man, and all the resources. And I think I'm blown away by what you've created, man. So you've done an incredible job, brother.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Well, and you know, like I said, I'm working on that receiving thing. So it's hard for me not to go, well, yeah, but it was your part of that. And that's truth. And I appreciate you tremendously, man. I wouldn't be here otherwise. Whew, that makes me emotional. All right. I'm looking at reading some things here. There's a lot of comments. Some of it is just guys saying you nailed it. You know, they have things that they seem they can't get done because they can't figure out who they are. People pleasing led to anger, exact opposite of what he wanted. It just, you know, Thanks, Donnie. I don't know about a saint, but I appreciate it, brother.
That's true.
Let's talk about, I think probably one of the major topics is obsessing over an ex. I think we all kind of do it. I mean, those of us that go through a breakup, through a divorce, in particular, why do we do that? And what do we do about it? Why do some guys, at me in the beginning, what's she doing on social media? Who's she, if I'm around her at a function, is she texting? Is she on her phone? Like, why do we do that shit?
Yeah. Well, let's get to the core of it. And it might not be, and I guarantee you it's not what you think. We've spoken about emotional rhythm and that vibrational frequency in the body. So every emotion has a vibrational frequency. And so if all the negative emotions, we'll call them negative just to put it in a context. I like to call it dark because negative gives it a negative connotation. They are not bad. They're not wrong. Okay. So I've actually changed the language and the dialogue around that, which is they're dark emotions, but they vibrate at a low frequency. Now, if your body gets used to that vibrational frequency, then it will seek to recreate that same emotional rhythm in the body. Same thing as if you're experiencing positive or lighter emotional states, and that's what your body's normalized, then that will be the case too. So let's just say that you've been in that relationship and there's been that emotional intensity up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, and that's no longer there. Unconsciously, the mechanism will be at an unconscious level for the body to recreate the same emotional rhythm. So what does it do? It guides us to make decisions and behaviors and take actions that will recreate that thing. So going onto our phone and seeing what she's up to will increase adrenaline and stress. What's our body used to? Adrenaline and stress. Yeah. Why do we want to feel adrenaline and stress? Because we don't want to feel depressed. Yeah. So anything that activates that emotional intensity kickstarts the nervous system and prevents us from feeling dead and empty inside. So when we're lonely, I guarantee you guys, you'll notice this is when you're sitting alone, when you've got that downtime, when you're feeling lonely, and when you're feeling dead and empty inside or boredom, bang, the ex will come into your mind, and you think that she's the emotional beholder. She's not the emotional custodian. She's not. She didn't make you happy. No one's responsible for your happiness. If anything, it's a gift because by the absence of her, you get to see the true you, what's really going on. And the best thing to do right now is to actually build self-worth, develop a strong sense of self, which is really rebuild your identity. A lot of people, so what I recognize, man, I went on this purpose to try and find myself, right? We hear this all the time. We see people traveling around the world and going on this fucking 2-year mission, going to India, meditating and all sorts of stuff. And they go to find themselves, which presupposes that themself exists outside of them, right? I've got a different framework. Fucking rebuild yourself by design, man. What kind of man do you want to become? Have a look at yourself now, like have a real honest fucking conversation with yourself and say, is this the type of man that I want to be moving forward? Get your fucking achiever's hat on, man. Get moving, like get the drive inside of you, get moving, get stimulated, get fucking life back in you, and have some motivation and get relentless with your growth. Yep. Because guys are sitting there timid and fucking, and it's like, man, get to fucking work, man. You got a life to live, We're in their 30s and 40s, and kind of like a third way through your life. You got to think about this, man. The question that we always got to ask ourselves is what I'm doing now, is the life that I've lived, the experience that I've had. If I was to go tomorrow, would I be completely satisfied? And it's a conversation that I have with myself routinely. Yeah. And that allows me to understand my vision. And like, what do I need to get done between now and those final days? And that's a big conversation to have with yourself. Yeah. So rebuilding yourself is really important. Absolutely, man, off the back end. So the reason why we do what we do with regards to obsessing over X is because of that emotional intensity that we seek, because we're sidestepping feelings of emotions that we don't like. And that's why we do it. What do we do? And so it just goes into the narrative and just fits very conveniently into that narrative.
Yeah. Well, we could do this forever. Justin, it's a lot of positive comments, brother. I know that we had talked, when we had talked about this, you had talked about you were probably going to put together like a 90-minute training session free to these guys.
Yes.
You mentioned that there was going to be a sign up link. I don't know if you can tell me and I can type it, or if you want to send it to me in the chat here. Yeah. I'll paste it in the room, whatever you want to do.
Yeah. I don't have a sign up link now. I'm not too sure where guys are at. Like, I like to give the opportunity if guys are really having an emotional heart attack now, and because I recognize this, that most of us will try and solve the problem behind closed doors first. Yep. And we do this through self-help books. We look at online material. YouTube video clips, podcasts, things like that. And then we become addicted to hope because that gives us the boost. It's like, oh, I'm fucking normal. It confirms and I feel a little bit relieved and it's nice, but it's a short period of time. Then we go and seek professional help. We work with a psychologist, counselor, therapist, and then we realize over a period of time that hasn't worked as well. I'm happy to give an opportunity now for guys to jump on a call if they're serious about change. I know we've spoken about the Alpha Code a little bit here. I actually wasn't prepared for it, but seeing as though you've asked it, I know there's guys, and that sounds like they're quite enthusiastic about their growth and development. What I can do is give a link to guys and just ask them, would they be interested in jumping on a call to see if it's the right fit to work together? And if it is, then I can have a call with them. 60 minutes, we'll sit down, and I'll, it's a self-discovery. I'll help them understand the core of their problem, and then we can discuss if and how we can help them. Just ask if the guys are listening now, and if there's just to get them to put a thumbs up or something in the comment. If there's enough of those, man, I'm happy to share a link and they can fill out that form. We can get on a call and see what we can do.
Guys, put it in the chat. Interested. Just type in interested, and we'll get you some info.
Yeah. Otherwise, I will be doing and I don't have a link for it just yet, but 90-minute live training about how to build genuine self-worth and confidence and rebuild yourself after a relationship is a presentation that I've put together, and I have run before, and it's been very successful in terms of helping guys really understand the core of their problems and how to overcome it for themselves. It doesn't give tools. It's an education session, that one. So it doesn't give solutions to it, so to speak, in terms of tools and application of it. However, it'll bring a high level of insight. It's that same thing that I said before. If you know about the problem, then at least you're aware of it and you can make sense of it. And it's potent.
I think I got about 15 here, Justin.
Interested?
Yep.
You guys are fucking unreal. Good on you. So let me just share this link in the chat section here.
Yep, and I'll copy over and I'll paste it in.
So what I'll say now, guys, just to be transparent about it, man, and Mike, you'll know this, man. We operate from the highest level, moral and ethical business practices. We don't accept every application. I just want to put this out there because it's important for you to know, just so there's no disappointments at the back end of that call or even through the application process there. We do this for you. We don't receive a man's money unless I feel like it's 100% fit. That's the reason why I do all these calls, because you start putting sales guys in and they start looking at commission and all sorts of shit. I want to make sure that it's the right fit and that I can help you. A lot of you guys have been taken advantage of, man. And that's a pattern that we need to stop. That's why I don't receive a man's money and bring him in if it's not 100% fit. But as you know, hopefully through the tone of today's conversation, we're results driven, man. And when we invite a man in, it's because we can both have full confidence knowing that it's the right fit, and that's aligned with our core values as an organization to making sure that we help men. I can say firsthand that a lot of people, I've invested over $500,000 in my personal development, and a lot of people have taken my money and haven't delivered results. So we want to make sure that it's the right fit. And if it's not, hey, at the end of that call, no hard feelings. I'll point you in a different direction that I think might be a better fit. But if it is the right fit, it's a mentoring process. I take you under my wing. I bring you into the environment. It's like you become a part of the family, man, and your problems become our challenges. We work through those things together. We get behind you in an environment with other men that support you to your fucking greatness. And make no mistake, guys, that we will get you across the line with your wellness. We will rebuild you from the ground up, and you will come out the other side of that a fucking confident, self-assured man. And I know that without a shadow of a doubt.
Man, it makes me emotional. Yeah, it's 100% true. And guys, I want to point out something. These guys know that this group, there's almost 6,000 men in this group. I don't allow life coaches into this group because I don't want men to be taken advantage of. And that comes from this man right here, because integrity is what he is all about. And so my stance on this comes from Justin, and that's why that's why I am who I am, is because of him. And I highly recommend you guys get in touch with Justin and see if it fits. And I can promise you it will change your life.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You will have, you become an emotionally self-reliant, independent man. And guys, let me just say this, the final words, man, you deserve it. It's a birthright for you to have a good life. We get one of these things. And if this is your calling, man, like, don't sidestep it. Some of you guys might have a fear of change. It's like, well, big fucking deal. It's just a feeling. It's just an emotion. When you're guided by those who have walked the path before you, we know exactly what needs to be done. So Yeah, man, pop it down. I'd be really keen. I'll have a look at the applications that come through, and I'm very much excited to connecting with you and seeing if it's a right fit to help you guys, man. 2022, let's make it the best year yet, hey? Let's make it the fucking best year yet.
Amen. Well, Justin, I want to thank you, man. This is awesome. I appreciate you. I appreciate it. And guys, if you want to get in touch with him otherwise on social media, you have the Alpha Code Academy, I believe, is on Instagram. And ACA Men's Development is a Facebook group that Justin also runs. It's similar to this, where he posts on a regular. So reach out to him in those places as well, but hit that application.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. But gents, appreciate your time and your presence, and in your involvement. Sounds like there's a lot of messages that are going through there. So appreciate it.
Yeah. Take care of yourself, Justin. I appreciate it.
Okay, brother. Good stuff. Right. See you, Mike.
Take care. Thank you so much for watching and or listening. Thank you to Nick Coyle and Lifer for allowing me to use their song, Born Again, which you're hearing now and at the intro to the podcast. Thank you to Justin Dullihanty and all of my brothers at the Alpha Code. Please visit the website, risingphoenixpodcast.com, to connect with me and other like-minded men who are looking to thrive and grow after their divorce. And remember to surround yourself with people who add value to your life, who challenge you to be greater than you were yesterday, who sprinkle magic into your existence like you do to theirs. Life is not meant to be done alone. Find your tribe. Take care.